Karen's smug grin could curdle milk from a mile away. She stood there, hands on her hips, her floral muumuu flapping in the evening breeze like a warning flag nobody heeded. The nerve of her, waddling onto my property with two strangers in tow, acting like she owned the damn place. My cabin, my sanctuary in the woods, was now her stage for whatever petty power trip she'd cooked up this time. I'd known Karen for years, ever since I joined the HOA to keep the peace in our little mountain community. Big mistake. She was the kind of woman who'd fine you for a crooked mailbox while her own yard looked like a junkyard exploded. Overweight, overconfident, and overflowing with disdain for anyone who dared breathe without her approval. Karen ruled our HOA like a dictator in polyester. She'd once reported me for excessive pine needles on my lot in the middle of a forest. But this was a new low, even for her. It started with a text. Inspection tomorrow, 6 p.m. sharp. HOA business. No please, no context, just Karen's usual barked orders. I ignored it. My cabin was private property, outside her jurisdiction, a fact she conveniently forgot every time she wanted to flex her clipboard authority. I figured she'd show up, snoop around, and leave when she found nothing to complain about. But when I checked my security cameras that evening, because yes, I'm paranoid enough to have them in the middle of nowhere, there she was, not alone, but with two sketchy-looking guys I'd never seen before. One carried a toolbox, the other a flashlight, and Karen was pointing at my cabin like she was directing a heist. I was 50 miles away, sipping coffee in my city apartment, but the cameras gave me a front row seat. Karen's voice crackled through the audio, shrill and commanding. Check the windows, make sure they're regulation. And the roof probably not up to code. Regulation? My cabin wasn't even part of the HOA grid. She was trespassing, plain and simple, and dragging strangers onto my land to do it. My blood boiled. This wasn't about rules. This was personal. I leaned closer to the screen, watching her waddle toward my front door, gesturing wildly. The two guys hired muscle or just clueless contractors looked uncomfortable but followed her lead. One tried the door handle. Locked, of course. Karen's face twisted in annoyance, and she started circling the cabin, peering into windows like a nosy raccoon. That's when I noticed the toolbox guy pulling out a crowbar. A crowbar. On my property. Enough was enough. I grabbed my phone and opened the app for my cabin's security system. A few years back, I'd splurged on a setup that let me control everything remotely: lights, heat, locks, even the front gate. It was overkill for a weekend retreat, but I'd learned the hard way that people like Karen don't respect boundaries. I tapped the screen, and with a satisfying beep, the gate's magnetic lock engaged. No one was getting in or out now. Karen didn't notice. She was too busy barking orders, oblivious to the fact that her little invasion was about to hit a wall. I watched her point at the roof, then at the shed, her voice dripping with contempt. This place is a disgrace. We'll have it condemned if we need to. Condemned? My cabin, which I'd built with my own hands, every beam and nail a labor of love? The audacity made my jaw clench. But I wasn't just Maddie was ready to teach her a lesson. I flicked another switch on the app, and the cabin went dark. Every light, inside and out, shut off in an instant. The security footage switched to night vision, and I could see Karen freeze, her head whipping around as the strangers muttered in confusion. "What the hell?" one of them said, his flashlight beam darting wildly. Karen, undeterred, snapped, "Keep going. It's just a power outage." "Oh, Karen, you have no idea." I leaned back in my chair, a grim smile spreading across my face. This was my land, my rules. I tapped another button, and the cabin's backup generator, usually a lifeline in storms, stayed silent. No power, no heat, no nothing. The temperature was already dipping into the 40s out there, and Karen's muumuu wasn't exactly winter gear. Let's see how long her bravado lasted. Back on the cameras, the trio was getting antsy. The toolbox guy tried the gate, yanking at it like it had magically opened. "It's locked," he called out, his voice tinged with panic. Karen stomped over, her face red even in the grainy footage. "It can't be locked. I have a key." She fumbled with her keyring, jabbing at the gate's lockbox, but it didn't budge. I'd overridden it remotely, and her precious HOA master key was useless. I couldn't resist. I flipped on the cabin's outdoor speakers, patched through my phone, and spoke. Karen, you're trespassing. You and your goons need to leave. Now. My voice boomed across the clearing, and I swear I saw her jump a foot. The strangers froze, their eyes wide, scanning the trees like they expected a SWAT team to rappel down. Karen, though, recovered fast. Who's this? Show yourself. You can't intimidate me. Intimidate? Oh, Karen, I was just getting started. You brought strangers to my property, I said, my voice calm but sharp. You tried to break in. The gate's locked, the power's off, and the cops are on their way. That last part was a bluff. I hadn't called anyone yet, but it hit the mark. The toolbox guy dropped his crowbar, and the flashlight guy started backing away from Karen like she was radioactive. This is HOA business, she shrieked, her voice cracking. You're in violation. You can't do this. I laughed, and the sound echoed through the speakers, cold and deliberate. My cabin's not in your HOA, Karen. You're the one in violation. Enjoy the walk back. The walk back. That was the kicker. The gate was a quarter-mile from the cabin, down a winding dirt path, and the nearest town was another 5 miles. With no power, no car, and no way out, Karen and her cronies were stuck. I watched them argue, Karen gesturing wildly while the strangers shouted back, clearly done with her nonsense. The toolbox guy threw up his hands and started trudging toward the gate, flashlight guy trailing behind. Karen stood her ground, screaming about lawsuits and her authority, but even she had to know she'd lost. I kept the cameras rolling, savoring every second. The temperature dropped further, and Karen's bravado started to crack. She hugged her arms, shivering, her muumuu flapping uselessly. The strangers were long gone, probably cursing her name as they stumbled through the dark. I could have unlocked the gate, turned the power back on, let her off easy. But why? She'd crossed a line, and I wasn't in a forgiving mood. An hour later, she was still there, alone, sitting on my porch steps like a sulky child. The security footage caught her muttering to herself, probably plotting revenge. But the fight was gone from her. She looked small, pathetic, a far cry from the tyrant who'd stormed my property. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. I finally called the sheriff's office, not because I wanted her arrested, but because I wanted this on record. When the deputy arrived, I unlocked the gate remotely and watched him escort a fuming Karen off my land. She tried to spin some story about official HOA duties, but the deputy wasn't buying it. Trespassing, attempted breaking and entering, and dragging contractors into her mess? She'd be lucky to avoid charges. The next day, I drove up to the cabin to check for damage. The crowbar was still there, lying in the dirt like a guilty confession. I filed a formal complaint with the HOA board, complete with security footage and timestamps. Karen was stripped of her position within a week, her reign of terror over. Word spread fast in our little community, and suddenly, nobody was afraid of her anymore. The woman who'd once fined people for unapproved flower pots was now a laughingstock, her name synonymous with overreach and humiliation. I sat on my porch that evening, a beer in hand, staring out at the woods. The cabin was quiet, the air crisp, the world right again. Karen had thought she could bully her way into my life, my space, my peace. She'd learned the hard way. You don't mess with someone who can lock the gate and pull the plug. Sometimes, justice isn't a courtroom or a finite's a cold night, a locked gate, and the sinking realization that you've lost everything you thought you controlled. The end.